Hey guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel Programming Knowledge. In today's Microsoft Excel tutorials video, we are going to see that how can we use the different steps to write a macro for ourselves. Now in the previous videos, we have already seen that how can we record the macros, and the recording of the macros means that we just did some steps, we performed some steps, and all those steps that we performed on Microsoft Excel were recorded in the form of the codes that was present in the Visual Basics for the Applications editor, and using those steps we can just reproduce those macros. And this code we had already seen when we edited the macro. So if you want, you can just go to this macros tab, select on any macro and click on edit. So here you can see that this is the Visual Basic for Applications editor where all our macros are present. Now we had created these macros by just providing it with some of the steps. We performed some steps at the Excel, and at the back end this actual code was stored. Now what we did was used the front end. So how if we want to use the back end to create a macros? So that is another step, and that is another way how you can just write a macro for yourself. So in this video we are going to discuss that actually how can we write macros for ourselves. So for that, what we are going to do is first of all just close this VBA. Then we are going to come back to our Excel. Now here we are going to begin writing our macros. So for writing the macros, what you gotta do is there are two steps. First step is partial writing, and the second step is full writing. Now what in the partial writing we are going to do is just select any of the cell, then go to this record macro tab and just provide it with any name like macro underscore partial, and provide it with some kind of a shortcut key like Control Shift W or Control Shift E. I'm going to provide, then provide it with any description that you want like partial, and click on OK. Now without performing any of the steps, you gotta stop its recording. Now when you do that, you can just go to this macros tab once again, and you will see that macro partial has now been created. Now you have created this macro using the GUI steps or the front end of Microsoft Excel. Now whatever steps that you want to perform into it, you can write it using the Visual Basic code. So how can you do that? You can just select this macro, go to edit, and you can see that this macro is already being created with some of the comments like the name of the macro, the description of the macro which we had just provided as partial, then the keyboard shortcut for the macro as Control Shift and E. Now it has no code in it, which means you can provide it with any code that you like. Now what I'm going to do for it is I'm going to just simply go to my above macros, and first of all this is this month macro, in which what I had done is selected a cell and then provided it with some text. So these two lines of codes are first for selecting a cell and then writing any kind of matter into it. So I'm just going to copy them. So for that you can just select them and press Ctrl C to copy it, and then come back to your macro and press Ctrl V to paste it. Now you can see that in the range itself a cell number is provided. Now the cell address or the cell number is unique, and you can provide it to any cell. So what I'm going to do is provide it with cell number like Z2. So I'm going to select a cell which is denoted by the name as Z2. Then what I'm going to provide it is with a data. So what data I'm going to provide it is test macro. Alright, now what I'm going to do is just press enter and just paste this code once again. Then you can see that now we have to select any other cell. So this time I'm going to provide it with cell Y2, and I'm going to provide it with only serial number. Then I'm going to offset it a little bit. So for that, what I'm going to do is just go to my second macro, that was the macro 1, which had a relative referencing in it. So I'm going to copy this line, that is active cell dot offset, like this. Just copy it and come over here and paste it over here. So it's active cell dot offset, that how much you want to offset. This is the x coordinate and that is the y coordinate. Y coordinate means how much you want to offset in the column manner, and this first argument is used to tell you that how much you want to offset in the rows manner. So here I'm going to offset my active cell by 2 rows and no columns. So I'm going to provide it with active cell dot offset 2, 0, and the rest of the things I'm going to keep same. Then I'm going to provide it with some data. So I'm just going to copy this line of code and then just press Ctrl V to paste it over here, and here I'm going to provide it with a message as end macro, like this. So this is how I have created my macro using the codes. Now this code can be anything that you want, and it is very simple. You gotta just know something about Visual Basic, or you can just use this simple copy paste method. Apart from that, what I'm going to do is press enter and provide it with a message box. So I'm going to type in msg box. This means that a message box will be shown, and I'm going to show a message. So I'm going to type in programming knowledge, like this. Then I'm going to press enter and I'm going to provide it with any other message box, like this. And here I'm going to provide MS Excel, like this. So using these 2 lines of code, what will it do is it would provide us with a message box. Alright, so this is all that I have written in this macro. Then I'm going to click on run, and as soon as I clicked on run, then you can see that at the column Z2 this test macro is written. At the cell number Y2 this SNO is written. Then I had asked it to offset by 2 rows and no columns. So 2 rows means at Y4 this end macro message is now written, and after that there was a message box provided. So in the message box, what I had given it is the message as programming knowledge. So now this message box is shown, and as soon as I click on OK, another message box that I had provided that contained the message as MS Excel is now provided. So you can click on OK, and that is this whole code has now been run of the macro partial that we had created. Now you can just close this VBA, and you can go to any other sheet and just use its shortcut, which was Ctrl Shift and E, and you can see that this macro has already been started. It has executed itself, and that is what it shows, that the macro that we had created, although in the VBA using the backend code, it behaves similarly as a macro that we had already created using the front-end Microsoft Excel. Now this was about how you can create a partial macro or a macro using the partial backend methods. Now how can you create a macro from scratch? If you want to just create it all the macros in the Visual Basic for Applications editor, how can you do that? So what you got to do is just go to your developer tab, and here is the Visual Basic. You can just go to it, and here you can begin writing your own macro. So what you got to do is where this end subline is present, you got to press enter. Then this means that this macro has ended wherever this end subline is. Then you can just write the keyword sub and put a space, then provide it with a name. Now this name is the macro name, so I'm just going to provide it with macro VBA. This means it is a backend macro, and then press enter. Now as soon as you do that, you might have noticed that this line is now created over here. A set of parentheses is written over here, and this end sub is written. This means that macro VBA is now a sub procedure, and using this macro VBA, we have created a new macro for ourselves. Now you can provide it with any code that you want. Suppose I'm just going to copy these 2 lines of code over here and paste them over here. Then in the range, I'm going to provide it with A3. So I'm going to make sure that this is my macro code. That is in the cell A3. You gotta select that cell and provide it with a content like test macro. Then I'm going to click on run. And as soon as I do that, you can see that in the sheet 8, this A3 cell is now containing this test macro. Now what if you want to reproduce it? You can just go to sheet 1. In the sheet 1, you can see that this A3 cell has no contents. You can just go to macros tab. You can see this macro VBA is already present over here, although we had created it in the backend using VBA editor. Then you can just select this macro, click on run, and as soon as you do that, you can see that this macro steps have been reproduced. So that is all about macros. How can you record the macros? How can you delete the macros? How can you edit the macros? How can you run them using the shortcut keys? What is the long method of running the macros? And how can you create them using the backend VBA code? That is all about the macros. And thanks for watching the video. Goodbye.